Welcome to English Reading for Learning.
Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was a brave pilot in the early days of flying. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. She broke records for flying the highest and the fastest. She became one of the most famous women in American history. Amelia was always as free as the wind. She set high goals for herself. She worked hard to achieve them. She was even willing to risk her life for them. Amelia believed in herself and her dreams. As soon as she met one goal, she set another. She reached for the stars and flew up toward them. Amelia Earhart wasn't an ordinary little girl. Right from the start, she saw life as an exciting challenge. Amelia was born in 1897. At that time, little girls wore dresses with ruffles and bows in their hair. But Amelia was a tomboy. Amelia's mother thought girls should be just as active as boys. She made special clothes for Amelia and her younger sister, Muriel. The girls grew up wearing bloomers. These were loose-fitting pants that the girls wore to play outside. Amelia and Muriel wore their bloomers to walk on stilts, soar on swings, and jump over fences. Amelia didn't just dress differently than other girls her age, she thought differently too. While Amelia was growing up, women were not treated as equal to men. Women weren't able to vote. They weren't given an equal education. They stayed at home instead of looking for adventure. Amelia didn't follow the rules for females. She did just what she wanted to do. She played sports, built inventions, and took risks by doing daring deeds. Amelia's parents and grandparents liked the idea that girls played sports and were active. Amelia and Muriel were given a baseball and bat, a basketball and basket, and even a football. One year for Christmas, Amelia asked for a sled. But she didn't want a girl sled with thick runners and a seat with a back. She wanted the kind of sled boys used. This was called a belly whopper. It had metal runners and a steering bar in front. The sled was waiting under the Christmas tree for Amelia. She waited eagerly for the first big snow. When it came, Amelia, Muriel, and their cousins went to the sledding hill in their town. Amelia was the first to go down the hill. She pushed off on her new sled, flopped down on her belly, and shot straight down the hill. The sled picked up more and more speed. Soon Amelia was flying down the hill. As she neared the bottom, something scary happened. A horse and wagon moved right in front of her sled. Amelia couldn't stop, and the horse and wagon couldn't move. What did she do? Amelia steered her sled right through the front and back legs of the horse. She made it to safety, and she learned that she had the courage and skill to make it through tough spots. Amelia had another exciting adventure, this time with a roller coaster. She and Muriel went to a fair where they rode the roller coaster. Amelia decided that she would build her own roller coaster on her grandfather's woodshed. Amelia took boards from the woodshed and measured and cut them. She put them together to form the tracks for the roller coaster. The tracks started at the top of the woodshed and ended on the ground. Next, Amelia attached her sister's roller skates to the bottom of a board. Amelia was the first to try out the roller coaster. She had an exciting ride from the top of the woodshed roof, but she crashed onto the ground. It was a rough landing. Amelia would remember her coaster ride in years to come. She said it felt as if she were flying. Amelia's childhood was full of fun and adventure, and as she grew up, Amelia never forgot that she could do anything she set her mind to. Amelia's life was not always so carefree. Her father moved from job to job and city to city. He took his family with him. Amelia graduated from high school in Chicago. She had gone to 5 high schools before then. Amelia planned to go to college. But World War I changed that. thousands of young men left the United States to fight in Europe. Women were needed to do their work. Amelia loved to read about women doing what were seen as men's jobs. She made a scrapbook. It showed women working as mechanics, bank presidents, and fire lookouts. Amelia chose to be a nurse. She began working at a hospital for wounded soldiers in Toronto, Canada. Her sister Muriel was at school there. Many of Amelia's patients had flown planes in the war. She visited some of them at an airfield outside of Toronto. Amelia watched the planes as they did amazing stunts. They did dives and rolls and loops. Right away, Amelia fell in love with flying. She promised herself that she would become a pilot too. It took 4 years for Amelia to keep that promise, but she got her chance in California. Her parents lived there, and Amelia went out to visit them. Her father took her to an air show. Amelia watched the planes and was filled with the dream of flying herself. She asked her father to help her get flying lessons. The next day, Amelia went up in a plane for her first flight. "As soon as we left the ground," Amelia later wrote, "I knew I had to fly." From high above the ground, Amelia saw the ocean and the beautiful Hollywood Hills. She said they looked like friends to her already. "I think I'd like to fly," she told her mother and father that evening. After that, Amelia couldn't keep her feet on the ground. Amelia signed up for flying lessons. Her instructor's name was Nita Snook. Nita was one of the first female pilots. She became Amelia's teacher and friend. First, Amelia had to learn how to handle a plane on the ground. Nita taught her how to drive, or taxi, the plane around an airstrip. Next, Amelia read books on the scientific laws of flight. Finally, Nita took Amelia up into the air. Amelia discovered the feeling of freedom she had in the air. But Nita worried that Amelia wasn't careful enough. Once, Amelia forgot to check to see if she had enough fuel for a flight. But nothing could stop Amelia from flying. She saved her money to buy her own plane. It was bright yellow. Amelia called it the Canary. Amelia still was not ready to fly solo. She took off in the Canary with Nita by her side. One day, Amelia had her first crash. After takeoff, Amelia could not steer the Canary high enough to clear some trees. Amelia pulled the nose of the plane up, but the plane stalled in the air. Then it fell to the ground and crashed. Amelia and Nita walked away unharmed. Not even a crash could stop Amelia. Within 2 years, Amelia had learned a lot about flying. In fact, she set a record in 1922. She flew the highest that any woman had ever flown. Newspapers began to print stories about the daring young pilot named Amelia Earhart. Amelia was photographed wearing her leather pilot's coat and her new short haircut. 5 years later, Amelia was living in Boston. Along with the rest of the world, she listened to the news of the amazing flight of Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh was the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. He flew from New York to Paris, France in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. Lindbergh was hailed as a hero all around the world. Who would make the next big news in the world of flight? It would be a woman. Amelia Earhart was ready. In 1927, Amelia received a telephone call that would change her life forever. Amelia was asked to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. Amelia didn't hesitate. She said yes. The plane was named the Friendship. Amelia would fly with 2 men. The flight was kept a secret. No woman had made it across the Atlantic before. In fact, 4 women had died trying. Amelia wasn't so sure that she would survive this adventure. She wrote her father a letter to be sent if she died. "Dearest Dad, hooray for the last grand adventure. I wish I had won, but it was worthwhile anyway." On June 17, 1928, Amelia boarded the Friendship in Newfoundland, Canada. They made a short stop in Halifax, Nova Scotia, due to weather. From there, the crew would fly across the Atlantic Ocean. Flight took 20 hours and 40 minutes. During that time, the crew ate eggs, oranges, and chocolate. The last part of the flight was full of worries. The crew didn't see land. Only 1 hour of fuel was left. No one knew where they were. Finally, they spotted land. The plane touched down on the coast of Wales in Great Britain. Right away, word of their flight spread around the world. Amelia was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. She was famous. Back in the U.S., Amelia and the crew of the Friendship were hailed as heroes. Crowds cheered them as they rode by in parades. Newspapers wrote headlines about Amelia. Her face became well known around the world. For Amelia, there was no turning back. She was America's most famous female pilot. She knew it was time to set new goals, and she was determined to achieve them. 4 years later, Amelia made a daring decision. She decided to fly solo across the Atlantic. No woman had done that before. Amelia wanted to be the first. Once again, Amelia took off from Newfoundland. This time, she was all alone. Amelia began her flight at sunset. She flew off toward England into a darkening sky. After a few hours over the Atlantic Ocean, Amelia's plane got into trouble. The altimeter failed. This was the instrument that measured how high the plane was flying, or its altitude. Things went from bad to worse. Soon, the plane flew into a bad storm. Amelia struggled to climb out of the bad weather, but when her plane climbed too high, she discovered that ice had formed on the wings. Amelia knew that the weight of the ice might cause her to crash into the ocean. She brought the plane down again. She flew so low that she saw the ocean's waves beneath her. The flight went on like this for several hours. Amelia would climb higher into the sky, then she would drop down again to escape the ice. At one point, flames began to shoot out of an exhaust pipe. Finally, daylight broke across the sky. Amelia decided to bring the plane down as soon as she saw land. She saw forests and fields, but not an airstrip. Soon she spotted an open field. She brought the plane down near some grazing cows. No cheering crowds were there to meet her. Instead, a farmer walked up to the plane. He asked her where she came from. Amelia answered, America. She found out that she had landed in Ireland. Her flight across the Atlantic had taken 14 hours and 56 minutes. The news of Amelia's flight spread fast. All over the world, people learned that Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Amelia was even more famous now. She continued to set records. She set a new speed record from the west coast of the United States to the east coast. Next, she flew over the Pacific Ocean from Hawaii to California. Amelia's courage and skill made her one of the most admired women in America. She became a close friend of Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the President of the United States. Amelia could have quit flying, but instead, she set another goal. What flying record was left to break? No one had yet flown around the world at its widest point, the equator. Amelia decided to be the first. She was 39 years old at the time. She said, I think I have just one more long flight in my system. Amelia planned to fly around the globe from east to west. In May of 1937, she took off from Oakland, California. Her first stop was in Hawaii. But the trip came to a sudden halt. Amelia crashed on takeoff from Hawaii. She walked away unharmed, but her plane had to be sent back to California for repairs. Next, Amelia decided to fly around the globe from west to east. In the summer of 1937, she took off from Miami, Florida. With her was Fred Noonan, a navigator. He was in charge of keeping the plane on its correct path during their 29,000-mile journey. Amelia's trip was big news in the United States. People read about each leg of her trip, and they worried about her safety. Amelia flew from Florida to Puerto Rico and on to South America. The next leg of the trip was full of danger. Amelia had to cross the Atlantic to West Africa. She almost lost her way, but she landed safely in Africa. From Africa, Amelia headed across Southeast Asia. Next, she flew south to Australia. From Australia, she flew east to New Guinea. Americans followed her path on a map of the world. Bad weather forced Amelia to take a break in her journey. She and Noonan rested for 3 days. Both were exhausted by the trip. In 1 month, they had made stops in 19 countries on 5 different continents. On July 2, 1937, Amelia took off from New Guinea. She was headed for Howland Island in the Pacific Ocean. This was the most dangerous part of the trip. Howland Island is just a tiny speck of land in the huge Pacific Ocean. It would be hard to find from the air. The flight was to take about 18 hours. Amelia had to cover 2,556 miles over the ocean. A ship was waiting to help guide her to the island. Right away, though, there was trouble. Amelia tried to send reports to the ship, but her voice faded in and out. The ship had trouble staying in touch with her. Then they received a message. It was not good news. "Gas is running low," Amelia reported. "Been unable to reach you by radio, flying at 1,000 feet. Only half hour's gas left." The ship's crew waited nervously. There was another message. Amelia's voice sounded worried. She was somewhere over the Pacific. She was running out of gas. Amelia never reached Howland Island. The ship waiting for her went out to sea. It searched and searched for her plane. Soon after, the U.S. Navy sent out its largest sea search in history, but they never found a trace of Amelia or her plane. What happened to the brave flyer? The government said her plane crashed into the sea and sank, but people didn't want to give up hope. Some thought she was on a spy mission. Some said America's enemies had captured her. Amelia's family and friends waited to hear news of her rescue, but it never came. Amelia's death is still a mystery, but her life is a shining example of courage. She set soaring goals and achieved them. Amelia Earhart will never be forgotten.
Thanks for watching and listening. Please click like and subscribe for new and latest uploads.